The Chronicle thanks our 2023 Meet the Candidates sponsors: Ann Colton Films, Flossmoor Station Restaurant and Brewery, Jonathan Kane Salon and Spa, and Tom Brabeck Law Office. With their help, HF voters will be well informed on Election Day, April 4th.
So my name is Dr. Theartris Childress III. I've been a resident of Homewood for the last 8 years, and I'm running for School District 161 school board member. Born and raised in Maryland, went to school in Louisiana, Xavier University of Louisiana. But honestly, I'm a lifelong educator who has spent his life, my professional life, really trying to close and reverse the achievement gap in Louisiana, Illinois, and around the country in different roles and capacities. And I just wanted to explore an opportunity of how I can be a value add to our current school board, of which my youngest son is a member of the district, and wanted to just be able to support in any way possible. And this is just one of the ways. In the education space right now, equity is a buzzword. And without getting too deep for it, I feel like the layperson's understanding should be, is everybody getting what they need in order to succeed in this space, right? And so there may be students that require a little bit more on the academic side, math, reading, character development. There may be students who are struggling with some social emotional wellness. And my position is really that how is the district positioned to meet the needs of students so that everybody, can win in the end. And so that's how I think about it. Part of my experience of being an educator, I've supported schools, again, from a national perspective, that have been in a number of different positions, be it public and private, charter under the public lens. And I think it's the responsibility of the board, along with the superintendent, to explore opportunities of financing the expansion and or modernization of the current buildings. Unfortunately, in some of them, more in the elementary spaces, expansion isn't just very easy because of the current layouts. And so I think that we're going to have to be thrifty in some ways, but I think we need to be able to look at a wide lens of where we could potentially partner with companies, the federal government, state government, any other agencies that see us as a value add to the work that they're doing, and potentially would contribute funds that we could then funnel in, not just for programming, but facilities expansion as well. Not long ago, was it said that a lot of the gains that were made around the country from a national perspective in the last 20 years were lost in the couple of years within the pandemic, which is very frightening, I'm sure, for community members, families, educators, local, national perspective. So my approach, honestly, is through an equity lens. Where are students from an academic perspective? What supports do they need? For students who are at or above grade level, how do we accelerate that on the other side of that? What are the social emotional needs and wellness? Because coming out of the pandemic, students did not necessarily grow from a social emotional perspective in that way, and their needs are going to be different. And I think that from a district lens, we have to be nimble in a way to see let's look at the data, what are kids saying that they need from an evidence-based perspective, and then what scientifically based research can we then glean on to then best support the needs of students. I think in most spaces, schools are academically driven, and that makes sense, right? However, I think in this space, there's a unique opportunity for us to spend as much time thinking about the academic catch-up for students that maybe have fallen a little bit behind from an academic perspective, but also try to fill in some of the gaps from the social emotional wellness perspective as well. I'm a huge proponent of the Common Core and next generation science standards, right? So Common Core is ELA and math, and then we have the next generation science standards, as well as the state standards and every other core content and elective content areas. With that being said, there are very clear outlines in terms of what students should know and be able to do developmentally appropriate at, from a K to even 12 perspective. Most teachers, unfortunately, teach in a whole group kind of way. And I hope it's kind of a one size fits all. I hope the student gets what they need to get. And if they don't get what they need to get, we typically blame the student who didn't get it the first time rather than necessarily be flexible to our instructional approaches to see, okay, I taught it the best way my first time. How do I then go another different way? Do I have another approach in my toolkit in order to then respond to the student needs? Because I'm clear as the teacher, I want them to get over this bar. The approach to get there is the negotiable space, right? And so are we constantly giving students multiple opportunities to ascertain mastery of said given standard? And are we being reflective enough at the educator level, department level, my professional learning community, getting feedback? Here's what my data says. What do you all think? What's my next steps? How am I flexible to those needs? And so I did it one size fits all the first time. How do I then differentiate for the multiple needs of my students if they are missing different portions of the prerequisite standards that are kind of hindering? So I know that's a lot of educational jargon, but I really just want us to be thoughtful around those who are in front of kids every day, that we don't necessarily blame kids when they don't understand the first time, right? But we're actually providing a number of different on-ramps and avenues of which to students to engage in the material. And hopefully over time, we'll get to the level of mastery that the teacher has set out for them. I'm not for teaching to a test. I want students to have certain capacities of which to be able to respond to a whole lot of academic situations. As a philosophical approach, I feel like it is important, again, it's the onus on the adults to create the learning environment and then supplement and add to the needs of the students, rather than I'm not saying this is happening at 161, but in other school districts, they're just, suspending kids and throwing them away. And that just benefits the life of the adult, but doesn't benefit the kid at all. All research says that exclusionary practices do not change behaviors of students. And so my question is like, all right, if we're seeing an uptick in this area, A, what are we seeing? Why are we seeing it? And then what is our response going to be at every single level, at the student level, the adult in front of kids level, and then strategically over time, like how do we get better at this? Because if we see that there are certain faculty and staff that maybe have a shorter fuse or don't have necessarily the capacity yet in order to meet essentially some different needs that students are requiring of them, then how do we as a district really be intentional and thoughtful around meeting the needs of those students? One, as I feel like exposure is huge, so opportunities are a big thing. Secondly, I really feel like we want to make sure that all adults who serve the needs of the humans at the school level, really, we attend to the belief gap. Does the person in front of me really believe in my capacity to be whatever I want to be, or, things that I may not even see in myself, you are really kind of pushing towards? Many people just need to feel like the person who's in front of me really cares about me and wants me to be my full self in this space and moving forward. And so they're constantly trying to add into that toolkit and that toolbox. And because my high expectations of you is if I give you what you need, you're going to flourish and like it's going to happen. And so that kind of belief and love, I think, is the thing that I want to continue to support in 161.